Good afternoon, delegates. If you could take your seats, please. We'll be going to start in a moment or two. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, delegates, and welcome back to the afternoon plenary for our wonderful OEWG meeting. As you will recall, when we left off this morning, we had just finished the presentation from Professor Ravi and Sophia on enhancing regional atmospheric monitoring of substances controlled by the Montreal Protocol. And we had started on a few questions and comments. We had a question from Mexico in relation to what is happening with the other regional areas. And so I'd like to turn to Professor Ravi to answer that question before we proceed with other delegations' comments. So, Professor Ravi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Co-Chair. Thank you for Mexico for bringing up this important point. I just want to note again that the Mexico was listed in the second 5 regions we would like to monitor, and we are cognizant of the willingness of Mexico to do this, and also we are aware of the capabilities existing within Mexico. On a personal note, I would like to point out that after all, you're all here because of the work done by Professor Molina and Roland, and Professor Molina was from Mexico. It will be very appropriate to have such monitoring measurements in Mexico. Thank you. And I just had one comment for the European Union. ADCOM stands ready to help any way it can in your preparations of any such documents, and both now and intersession between now and the Montreal Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. So now we'll continue with our list of speakers. Before lunch, I saw that we had Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, India, Brazil. I also now have Iran on my list. So I'll take them in the order that they were before lunch. They've slightly changed on my board, but that's okay. But Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Bangladesh appreciates the efforts of Secretariat, the Advisory Committee and the WMO in advancing the implementation of Decision 37/1 on enhancing regional atmospheric monitoring of substance controlled by the Montreal Protocol. Bangladesh recognizes the importance of strengthening atmospheric monitoring to improve scientific understanding and support the effective implementation of the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Amendment. Bangladesh also notes that our country previously supported atmospheric monitoring activities at Vola Island, one of the islands in Bangladesh, contributing to regional monitoring efforts. We therefore appreciate the progress made in identifying priority regions and engaging the potential host countries. In this regard, Bangladesh should appreciate clarification on 2 points. The first one, could the Secretariat explain the criteria used to identify the 4 priority countries for informal consultation, and whether previous atmospheric monitoring experience, such as Bangladesh activities in Bhola Island, was taken into consideration during the selection process. And the second one is, does the Secretariat envisage opportunities for additional Article 5 parties with relevant monitoring experience to participate in future phases of the initiatives? Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Bangladesh. We'll just see if there are any more questions, and then we will turn to the Secretariat and Ravi. Next on my list, I have Saudi Arabia. You have the floor.
شكرا سعادة الرئيس المشاركة. تتقدم المملكة العربية السعودية بالشكر إلى أمانة الأوزون وفريق التقييم التكنولوجي والاقتصادي تيب على العرض المقدم بشأن تعزيز الرصد الإقليمي للغلاف الجوي للمواد الخاضعة للرقابة بموجب بروتوكول مونتريال تنفيذا للمقرر 36.1. وفي هذا السياق تحيط المملكة العربية السعودية علما بما ورد بشأن المناطق والمواقع المحتملة لإنشاء أنشطة رصد إقليمي. وتؤكد المملكة العربية السعودية أن إدراج أي دولة أو موقع ضمن قائمة المواقع المحتملة لا ينبغي أن يفهم على أنه موافقة مسبقة أو التزام باستضافة محطة رصد، فأي مشاركة أو استضافة محتملة يجب أن تكون طوعية وأن تتم بالتشاور الكامل مع الطرف المعني وبعد استكمال الإجراءات الوطنية والحصول على موافقة الجهات المختصة وتقييم الالتزامات الفنية والمالية والمؤسسية المترتبة على ذلك، حيث إن هذه المسألة الفنية تترتب عليها التزامات طويلة الأجل تشمل الموقع والبنية التحتية والمعايرة والتشغيل والصيانة والقدرات الفنية وضمان جودة البيانات وإدارة العينات وحوكمة المعلومات والتنسيق المؤسسي المستمر. تلاحظ المملكة العربية السعودية مواصلة النقاش الفني حول تعزيز الرصد الإقليمي للغلاف الجوي، شريطة يتم ذلك بما يحترم السيادة الوطنية والظروف الوطنية والطابع الطوعي للمشاركة، ودون اعتبار أي دولة أو موقعا مرشحا للاستضافة قبل النقاش والتشاور مع الدولة المرشحة. شكرا سعادة الرئيس المشاركة.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. I am sure your points are well noted by the Advisory Committee and by the Secretariat. Next on my list, I had India. India, do you still wish to take the floor? Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We thank the Ozone Secretariat, the Advisory Committee of the Vienna Convention General Trust Fund, and the Multilateral Fund Secretariat for their rigorous preparatory work. We welcome the progress made by the 98th Executive Committee towards establishing a dedicated pilot project funding window, along with guidelines for preparation and implementation of pilot projects to enhance regional atmospheric monitoring of controlled substances. Madam Co-Chair, to ensure the sustainability and success of this framework, it is important that site selection, technical evaluation, and the physical establishment of any monitoring station must proceed strictly on a voluntary basis, requiring the explicit, formal, written consent of the host country's government. Secondly, we must establish clear, non-punitive protocols regarding data governance. All raw and validated data generated by monitoring stations hosted in Article 5 parties must be shared with the respective national ozone units first. The Regional Atmospheric Monitoring Network must function strictly as a supportive instrument for local scientific capacity building and domestic policy formulation, and not as an external compliance policing or enforcement mechanism. Finally, the upcoming 2027 to 2029 MLF replenishment should explicitly integrate this initiative as a funded additionality, because atmospheric monitoring goes beyond standard compliance obligations. Its sustainability depends entirely on dedicated funding. We look forward to participating in further discussions on the matter. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, India. I note that I actually didn't even turn off my microphone. I'm so sorry for that, if that was disconcerting for you. I'm sure your points are well noted. I now turn the floor to Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. This time I will not be as brief. We appreciate the Ozone Secretariat and the Advisory Committee for the presentation. We note once again with interest that Brazil has been identified as one of the suitable locations for enhancing regional atmospheric monitoring. As mentioned, we are interested in further exploring the possibility of establishing a site within our territory. We highlight that it's important not only to have financial support for the establishment of the monitoring sites, but also to ensure their long-term viability. We would appreciate further clarification regarding the expected timeline for the availability of funding, as well as how the funding under discussions here relates to and this differs from the funding window for pilot projects agreed by the Executive Committee of the Multilateral Fund. For example, could the funding include building a tower or other necessary infrastructure? We appreciate the development of the online tool and look forward to testing it. We also welcome the opportunity to provide comments and suggestions to the Secretariat, and we remain open to further engaging with the Advisory Committee and with other parties about this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil. A little longer, but still welcome. I turn now to Iran. You have the floor. Yes, Iran.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and also thanks for the excellent presentation and new information provided on site selection of atmospheric monitoring in different continents. My comment is a very general comment on the agenda, I think. Sir, as you mentioned, that it would be a flask sampling and the coverage area would be within the 500 and also 1,000 kilometers. As much as possible, but I think the coverage side is very vast, then it may cross the different countries. Therefore, the approval should be received from covered countries too. Not only the host country is enough, I think. I'm wondering whether the Secretariat considers important issue now, because if it is later, then the project maybe will be delayed very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iran. On my list now, I have Canada, Kenya, United States of America, China, and Australia. There have been a couple of questions come in. Perhaps I can turn to Ravi and Sophia to answer the questions from Bangladesh, Brazil, and Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Turning to the question from Bangladesh, first I want to note with appreciation that the Bole Island was extremely helpful, and the observations from Bole Island specifically want to note the participation of Dr. Abdul Salam in doing these measurements, making it possible. What it enabled us to do is actually we have roughly 1.5 years of data. So we know what can be done at Bole Island and how it could work. There were some issues about local emissions, but there could be other sites within Bangladesh that are even more pristine and away from the ocean interferences. So in that sense, the Bangladesh site has already gone through the first phase of kind of looking at the suitability of the site. I hope that answers your question. And we're very grateful that it was made possible to use the EU pilot project money to make those measurements, and those data would be available very shortly. Thank you. I apologize if our presentation came across as though this is the predetermined sites and this is what the country should do. It is very clearly noted. We noted it in the last presentation. It's completely voluntary. We really realize that all countries have various concerns, and this is not a policing activity. This is an activity to quantify the emissions as best as we can, so we know that the Montreal Protocol is on track. I know that there are differences between bottom-up and top-down inventories, and those issues are going to keep coming up. In terms of the question from Brazil, thank you for your interest in doing this. The specific question you asked, would the cost of a tower be included? Yes or no? We'd like to kind of figure out what is the optimal thing that could be done. When you go and look at the costing tool that is available, you'll actually be able to break it down and see what the costs are. So we realize that cost for some may not have to be used, and so it could be available for other things. So you can play with those costing tool to figure out how does it work. And the European Union funded money is slated to set up at a minimum 3 stations, and that means it can be 3 or more depending on how much resources are needed and how much does it go. That also brings up the question of sustainability for both the question from India and from Brazil. That's a very important thing, and essentially once we know that a site is suitable, we would like to sustain it as long as possible. And MLF is here, and they could maybe speak to that. MLF, I believe, the certain amount of resources have been targeted towards topping up and continuing such measurements. And I'm looking to MLF if they want to add something about this point. Or did I cover it? Okay, the MLF is saying I covered it. In other words, that money is there to top up what the European Union funding would be starting. Regarding the comment and a question, sort of a question from Iran, we fully understand the atmosphere doesn't seem to care about geographical boundaries. Atmosphere does what it does. So we realize that if you sample in one place, we could be going across countries. So that's actually a very interesting question. If the regional countries would like to come together and make a decision on something like that. This is only my personal point of view. I haven't talked to the ADCOM about it or to the Ozone Secretariat, but as a scientist, I would think that that should be a good possible approach for you all to consider. And the 500 and 1,000 kilometers, just to make sure we're on the same page, those are kind of approximate numbers. Depending on exactly where is blown the prevailing winds, it could be a little longer, it could be a little shorter, and depending on exactly when you interrogate that air sample. So take it as a rough guide as to what kind of regions you're thinking about. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. I'll now return to the list I have in front of me. If delegates would like to also suggest some ways forward on how we might proceed with this agenda item, that would be helpful. We have the potential for some informal groups or margins discussions or further consultations at the MOP. So there are a few different ways forward that we're contemplating at the moment, and your suggestions would be helpful. I now turn the floor to Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and as other delegates, I also want to appreciate the presentations by the Ozone Secretariat and Ravi from the Scientific Advisory Committee, which have been very helpful in providing us with an update of where we are with the work on regional atmospheric monitoring. I think it's useful just to quickly take a step back and realize the progress that has been made over the past couple of years. We have an advisory committee that's undertaken analyses, identified regions, and even now has approached governments. We have several governments that have indicated interest in hosting a station, and we certainly welcome that interest. We have an update also from the European Union about their contributions of, I think, 4.5 million euros that should be coming, fairly soon. And most important, I think that at the last meeting of the Executive Committee, there was a decision to create a funding window to support the work on atmospheric monitoring, specifically $9.25 million to support the preparation and implementation of 3 projects in regions identified by the Advisory Committee, and an additional $1.8 million for the continued operations of 3 more stations that may be established through the meeting of the parties. And I think the implication there is that they may be established with funding from the European Union. Just to note that means that at this stage, we don't know in the end what the stations will ultimately cost. I mean, these are approximate number, but based on the numbers we have, we're talking now about potentially 6 stations. So just I think it's important to keep that in mind because, if we're inviting, more 10 countries to submit proposals, we also have to bear in mind that, we may not have enough funds, at least in the short term, to support actually 10 stations, right? Right now, it looks more like it would be 6, which would still be quite a significant improvement compared to what we have now, especially if they're strategically located in areas where there are significant gaps. It's important to note also that the decision from the EXCOM requests the Multilateral Fund Secretariat to seek the guidance of the Advisory Committee during project review on the location and other relevant factors for monitoring stations. So, the Executive Committee has sort of taken it on its own to imply that the Scientific Advisory Committee will help. And I think that's where there's perhaps a need to ensure that there's like good strategic coordination and a clear plan. And this goes back to the intervention by the European Union. We're not really sure that we need necessarily a lot of discussion at this meeting or even contemplating a discussion. But we do think that given the developments at the EXCOM, strategic coordination will be needed between the work of the parties and that of the Executive Committee to ensure complementarity and efficient implementation of the activities. For instance, would the parties actually need to clearly task the Advisory Committee to provide this guidance to the Multilateral Fund Secretariat, since the Advisory Committee is really a body that receives this guidance from the parties. Secondly, it will also be important that projects funded through the EU contribution include preparation of proposals that would seek funding for the multilateral fund for the continued operation. I think because the implication is that, the EU funding may fund the establishment, the capital cost, and possibly some of the operating or incurring costs of these stations. But moving forward, then there would need to be funding from the multilateral fund to sustain those stations, which means proposals would somehow need to be developed and considered by the executive committee. So that's something else to think about of how this process would work. So this is what we have to say at this point in terms of the kind of discussions that we should be thinking of having, whether we continue it at the MOP or if there's time at this meeting to have more of an informal discussion. We leave it up to the hands of the co-chairs and also depending on the preferences of other parties. But we also have a couple of questions to the advisory committee, and you didn't divide the time between questions and discussion, so I assume we can do both at the same time. So in your presentation, you had like a map where you compared current coverage and the coverage that you would like to have with the 10 proposed stations, and I think. Yeah, we had understood that previously, but as we blow up the map, as we make it bigger on our laptop, it seems there's still like quite a large geographical area in Asia, like going from East China, up to I don't know where, sort of could be northern Russia, where there seems to be still there would still be no coverage there, and within that geographical area, it does seem to us that there are populous regions there. So maybe you could explain to us why you think no stations may be needed within that very large area across like Central, Western Asia. It could be also the fact that as we're aware, China is also establishing new monitoring stations. So perhaps those will fill the gaps that are there, but we're not necessarily aware of that. The other question is, so far from that region, you have not received necessarily a positive indication of interest from countries to actually hold stations. So if we don't receive those, like what would be sort of the plan B to ensure that these gaps are covered? Are there perhaps nearby countries or regions that could also be considered? Maybe it's too early to think about that, I don't know, but it just seems like it's probably from all the regions of the world, like this is one of the most significant ones to ensure that we have comprehensive global coverage. So that's why I'm asking the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada, and I'll see if there are any more questions before I turn to the Secretariat and to Ravi. I now give the floor to Kenya. You have the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Kenya appreciates and welcomes the progress report of the Secretariat and Advisory Committee on the evaluation of suitable monitoring sites for enhancing regional atmospheric monitoring of substance control by the Montreal Protocol. By evaluating the regional monitoring sites, countries will be able to benefit from prevention of illegal trade, accurate tracking, and data reporting of controlled substances. We take note that the Multilateral Fund has provided a funding window for pilot monitoring sites identified and possibly to be identified. Following this, Kenya would wish to mention some of the strategies that could be considered to enhance atmospheric monitoring regionally and globally. They include establishment of more monitoring stations to cover regions that might not have been considered, equipping the existing monitoring stations with modern high technology instruments, training and capacity building on monitoring techniques and data analysis, public awareness and education through campaign on importance of the Montreal Protocol issues, and support research and development initiatives on impacts of controlled substances and their reduction in the region. In conclusion, Madam Co-Chair, we would like to emphasize that the existing monitoring sites, like the one in East Africa region, should be taken into consideration for upgrading. We look forward for further discussion on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenya, for those observations. I turn the floor now to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you to the Secretariat and to the Advisory Committee for this presentation that they shared before lunch. We continue to be supportive of atmospheric monitoring to increase our understanding of regional emissions and ultimately the global atmospheric abundances of controlled substances. We saw how important it was to have a look into what is happening in our atmosphere back in 2018. So we appreciate the efforts that this body has taken to improve atmospheric monitoring globally. And so we're pleased to see that there's interest from 3 different parties to establish monitoring stations. And we also thank the distinguished delegate from the EU for sharing the good news that the grant is moving forward and there will be hopefully money in place soon to establish monitoring stations under that funding mechanism as well. So we were very pleased last month that the executive committee agreed on a funding window to establish 3 pilot project stations. So with these 2 funding streams now available, as other delegates have mentioned, we do see how it would be useful to clarify the differences between these 2 funding mechanisms and the responsibilities of the advisory committee and those who are reviewing the projects. So we do look forward to engaging with the EU on any draft CRP that they are putting together. Our understanding is that they're still developing this, so it's not ready to discuss at this meeting. So in light of Madam Co-Chair's question about how to move forward on this, in our view, we think, we would look forward to discussing this issue further at MOB. Thanks.
Thank you very much, United States, for that clear proposal. I give the floor now to China. You have the floor.
谢谢主席。首先感谢咨询委员会和专家们的努力工作，使得全球大气监测网络空缺弥合完善工作不断取得新的进展。我代表团也高兴地注意到臭氧秘书处和咨询委员会向会议报告的站点选址的最新进展。我们期待优先开展的监测项目能够顺利推进，在提升发展中国家受控物质大气监测能力的同时，为科学评估提供可靠支撑。同时，我们也认识到技术标准升级、设备运维和人员能力建设均需要持续稳定的资金保障。因此，我方呼吁在此领域持续投入相应的资源，共同推动受控物质全球监测网络布局不断完善。谢谢主席。
Thank you very much, China. I still have 2 countries on my list, Australia and United Kingdom. If any other parties wish to take the floor on this issue, please press the button. I now give the floor to Australia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We appreciate the updates provided in the presentation before lunch by the Secretariat and the representative of the Advisory Committee. It's great to be updated on the progress, and it's very pleasing to hear that 3 parties have expressed an interest in hosting monitoring stations. We have a couple of questions for the Advisory Committee and the Secretariat. So we'd be interested to get a little bit of a readout on the outcomes of consultations with the WMO and about any potential, when we think about, I guess, further monitoring stations or even the ones that have from countries that have expressed interest on potential to use existing infrastructure within the Global Atmosphere Watch Network or other WMO coordinated networks in the priority regions and countries. We'd also be interested in a better understanding of the availability of local WMO technical and scientific expertise that might be able to assist with measurements and analysis of data, so we can obviously work effectively and efficiently in the establishment and ongoing work of these stations. Australia is supportive of the recent XCOM decision establishing a funding window for the 3 pilot projects to develop and undertake regional atmospheric monitoring of Montreal Protocol substances. We appreciate the links being made to ensure scientific advice from the Advisory Committee is considered in the development and review of project proposals and the inclusion of ongoing funding to support projects which will be initially undertaken by the Ozone Secretariat with the assistance of the EU. And we thank the EU for their update on the availability of that funding. We note, as the EU did, that the representative of the Advisory Committee outlined the emerging issue of coordination and interaction and alignment of work being carried out by the Ozone Secretariat and that being carried out by the Multilateral Fund. We think that's a significant area of kind of intersection and potentially an area in which there needs to be kind of more clarity about how those two bodies and funding approaches work together. We are keen to see more progress and to consider what action is needed by parties to support this work. We note the proposal by the EU on the development of a draft CRP, and we're happy to participate in any discussions, including potentially informally at this meeting, that might help inform that CRP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. And I note another couple of questions to Ravi. And then finally on my list, I have United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you to the Advisory Committee for its excellent work and for the presentation. We'll try to keep our remarks brief. So we strongly support expanding the network of regional atmospheric monitoring stations, and we're pleased to see the progress being made by the Advisory Committee on this. We know that the Advisory Committee brings together a wealth of expertise in this field. So one question from us is, could the committee say a little bit more about how it engages with the wider scientific community when conducting its work? And to respond to your question, Co-Chair, on a way forward, similar to the United States, we would welcome further discussion on this item at MOP, noting the EU flagged that they are considering tabling a CRP for MOP, which we look forward to engaging on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, UK. So we do have some questions from Canada, from Australia, and then a last question from the UK. Perhaps they are, I think probably some to Ravi and maybe one to Sophia. So I'll leave it to you to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, Canada, for your intervention and your questions. You asked 2 specific questions. Can we explain the existing versus the 10 stations in terms of what it covers geographically? I just would like to point out that in addition to geography, we also took into consideration where and how much emissions are likely to come. So in other words, it's a little bit more than a 2-dimensional issue. That are superimposed on that is where are the emissions going to be. Ideally, we would like to have coverage across the globe, but it's a question of prioritization, and that's how we came up with it. Yes, there are possibilities of stations in nearby countries that could be used to monitor and quantify emissions of the region of interest and maybe a little bit beyond. So that is something that we are very cognizant of, and we looked into that issue before we came up with our priorities. And we realized that we came up with 5 top priorities, even though we had funding for only 3. Okay, so that was kind of taken into consideration. I hope that answers your question. If it didn't, I'll be happy to talk to you on the sidelines. And Sophia, you want to add anything to that? Okay. And then the question from Australia, the WMO representative is here. I think he was here. I saw him this morning. Okay, he is here, and he is an observer in the advisory committee. And to be honest with you, in the advisory committee, observers contribute just as much as the regular committee members. Just so that you know, I think of Paulo as a scientist rather than somebody working at WMO. And we are coordinating with him significantly. And in fact, one of the members, Sophia mentioned this, one of the members from this Ozone Secretariat went and spent 2 weeks at WMO looking at all the potential sites from the GA and associated stations. So we really want to take advantage of that, and we are completely in sync, that's the way we say it, with WMO, and we keep talking to them. Shall I take a stab at the third question first, before you add something? Okay. Regarding the UK, we are very engaged with the community, scientific community on this issue, on a couple of different reasons. First, it actually is not as large a community as you might think. We know pretty much everybody who does this and capable of doing this. Thanks to the quadrennial ozone assessment, all these scientists can come to it and contribute to it. So we are very plugged in with the community. So for example, the samples collected at Bola Island were actually analyzed at University of Bristol. And some of the Aussies that I showed you were done by Alistair Manning, also of UK, and Luke Western of MIT. So this is a pretty tight-knit scientific community who kind of interact quite well. And we have many forums to meet in addition to the Montreal Protocol meetings, many scientific discussions that go on. Sophia, I'm turning over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. I just wanted to add a few points which you touched upon earlier regarding the interventions by the distinguished delegates of India and Saudi Arabia. I just wanted to clarify that the proposed sites, and especially including the prioritized sites, they were based purely on scientific considerations, on the strength of emissions, on scientific analysis. We call them OCs. That means which show how capable these sites are to detect regional emissions, but also on available infrastructure and expertise. So there were no political consideration, of course, in these considerations, but there is nothing that can be done without permission from the local governments. we cannot proceed with doing anything about that. This is just only scientific information that we provided to the parties. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say something. Thank you, China, for your comments. We did note, it is kind of rapid. China is setting up a lot of stations around China, so that actually answers one of the questions from Canada. So that region, we are kind of assuming is kind of taken care of. But in addition to China establishing the stations, they are also setting up a calibration facility and will be interested or trying to do some in other places. So we're coordinating with the scientists in China towards that issue. So I just want to make sure that we're very grateful to what China has done and it is continuing to do. And thank you.
And I would like also to add that in responding to a question by the distinguished delegate of Australia regarding our cooperation with WMO. Actually, WMO, we have been cooperating with them for many, many years, but that was in connection with the implementation of projects on ozone and UV monitoring. And we have an excellent cooperation on that, and they are responsible actually for the implementation of those projects. We just give them the money and then they carry out the work. But of course, when it comes to monitoring substances, we know that they have the scientific advisory committees. They have a scientific advisory committee on greenhouse gases, which we try to piggyback on and or to liaise with. But we will need to discuss a little bit further in order to streamline really and define much better our cooperative work on this issue. So some more work is needed there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophia and Ravi, for those answers, and thank you to delegates for your observations and your questions. I think on the proposed way forward, I did not hear a burning desire to sit down and have a contact group at this meeting. So, and in light of the proposed CRP, which the EU has suggested it was looking to develop, and the fact that a number of countries have expressed interest in working with the EU on a CRP before the MOP, I propose that margins discussions between interested parties and Ravi and Sophia continue at this meeting, and that parties consult intercessionally on development of a CRP, and that we revisit this issue at the meeting of parties in October this year. Is that way forward acceptable to the parties? I don't see anyone wishing to take the floor, so I assume that is acceptable. Thank you very much, parties and colleagues. Just before we close this particular session, I would like to draw your attention again to the online tool developed by the Secretariat for estimating the costs of establishing and operating a monitoring station. The link was shared with you during the Secretariat's presentation and is once again on the screen, and you'll find this presentation on the Secretariat's portal. So please take time to test the tool and send your comments to the Secretariat by the end of August so they can finalise the tool before MOP 38. With that, I close the agenda item for this meeting on the understanding that we come back to it at the meeting of parties. Thank you very much, delegates, and I now turn to my colleague for the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. I now invite parties to consider agenda item 7 on further strengthening of Montreal Protocol institutions. At MOP 37, an informal group was established to clarify and exchange views on the draft decision that had been introduced at that meeting and other key issues that were raised during the informal meeting of the parties on facilitating and implementation of the Montreal Protocol that had convened prior to MOP 37. Representatives expressed interest in a continued dialogue on the outcomes of the informal meeting, and the parties agreed to include the matter on the agenda of this meeting. In addition to the summary of the outcomes of the informal meetings, parties have before them a compilation of information provided by parties on illegal trade practices and approaches taken by national authorities to identify and address such cases. And this is contained in document 48/3, which updates a similar compilation made available before OEWG 47 and includes information received from parties since 22 April 2025. Since the preparation of that note, an additional 27 cases have been submitted to the Secretariat. Would like to thank the parties for the additional submissions that they have made since OEWG 47. We also take note that 2 CRPs have been prepared and posted on the portal. That's CRP 3, submitted by Cameroon on behalf of the African states, and CRP 4, submitted by Australia, Canada, the European Union, Norway, and Switzerland. I would now like to turn to, first we start with CRP 3 for its introduction, and then we move on to CRP 4, the introduction of CRP 4. After that, we'll have discussions on the 2 CRPs and any other discussions under this item. I would now like to give the floor to Cameroon for introduction of CRP 3. Cameroon, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. As you likely said, a lot of discussion has been on this subject, and coupled with the one-day workshop that we've had back-to-back. And with this, we've equally had the document presented to us. That is the document you just cited, document 148/3. In that which we had a couple of information about it. And there we talked about up to 1,117 cases of illegal trade. And we actually noticed that this report is from 2002 right up to present date. And as well as cases, and this we noticed that some of the cases were from Eastern European state with almost 587. It equally suggests other best practices that it's necessary for us to look at. Given all of this information that we have, we think that there's a need to look at more detailed things, concrete things, in addition to what we already have in this project document. And that's why we are actually bringing the attention of the Secretariat and this Assembly that you consider the decisions so far cited. If you look at as the CRP presents, actually make allusion of decision 714, 7, 31, 3, 35, 8, 3512, and as well as 36.9. These are auditions we actually were inspired to present what we are requesting here. If you look at the CRP, we are requesting actually 4 or 5, making 5 requests. The first, we are actually requesting that the Secretariat consider a report on the available tools to enhance tracking of illegal trade, and to maybe propose a supply chain to include online marketplaces, because we see that with time we're having a series of e-commerce, and these at times are difficult to track, and at times maybe escape the information from a level of each of the various maybe the parties. So how do we track them? So we request in the Secretariat to consider this issue and propose a tool for us. We are the second part of the request. We equally requesting the Ozone Secretariat to propose a standard operating procedure. What we mean here is that for us to have a maybe illegal trade so far, we haven't active 5 party. We can, if it's a procedure, we can propose that each time we know we have peak, but what do we know, how do we, as that become a bit kind of obligatory, that helps country now to have information and easy for editing or auditing. The third one, we actually requesting the Secretariat in considering Article 4B of the Montreal Protocol that propose a checklist for a licensing system. What we mean here is that if you have a licensing system, what are the elements, feature elements you can easily see for a licensing system? That's what we want now. We request the Secretariat to maybe propose something like that. Any license system anywhere, you should have the same formula or same approach. The fourth here, we actually requesting that this license system maybe propose maybe a software that can maybe permit the officers to work easily, so that you go into information, you can kind of harmonize the information from the various call it platforms, and it will be much more easier for somebody to come into any of the the system to extract what information he wants to, and this is going to permit maybe help us to reduce call it illegal trade as well and other practices. And the last one, we are saying that in order to do all of this, we want maybe expertise from the Montreal the Secretariat, the Multilateral Fund, as well as the CAP, without forgetting the World Custom Organization, to help us so that officers should be better trained to get this new instrument, this additional training, or maybe capacity to capacitate them to permit them enable to carry out the activity freely, to ensure that we have a good license system, a good reporting system. And this, we are saying that if this information are requesting, if you can get it before the 49th meeting of parties, or before meeting of the Open Ether Working Group. That's our submission, Co-Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cameroon. I will now like to turn to the proponents of CRP4 for the introduction of the CRP. I turn the floor now to, I believe it's Australia, to introduce the CRP. Maybe it's Canada? Australia? Canada? Okay, Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, yeah. Sorry for the confusion. Australia is listed first, but that's just an alphabetical order. So it's, we're all equal in that submission. I've drawn sort of the short straw in having to be the one to introduce it, but my co-sponsors from Australia, the EU, Norway, and Switzerland may want to come in afterwards to complement my introduction. So it's nice to be sitting right next to Cameroon, to be presenting a decision on this issue. So I didn't know at the beginning of this meeting that my neighbor was going to present a decision on this issue. If so, we would have maybe talked to each other and try to see how we could work together. But, you know, there you go. I think that there's a lot of elements of our proposals that go in the same directions, ultimately have similar objectives, and probably there's a lot of complementarity between the two CRPs. Essentially, you know, with respect to CRP4, I mean, our intention was to try to pick up on some of the key issues that were identified over the past couple of years. For instance, in some of the background information that the Secretariat prepared for the informal meeting that we had last year on facilitating the implementation of the protocol. Some of the discussions that actually took place at that meeting, you know, based on what we heard, and other information also, that because it's been a few years that we've been considering this issue, but we haven't really taken you know, a really comprehensive decision. And last year we started considering a decision from the EU. There was not much time to actually conclude on that decision, so we sort of left it, you know, for a continuation of discussion at this meeting. Essentially, what the draft decision, you know, tries to do is identify what we hope are relatively non-controversial issues that could help in closing some potential loopholes in illegal trade through strengthening parties' licensing systems for the import and export of controlled substances, and by strengthening certain data reporting. And most of these issues were either identified by the Secretariat or the parties through discussions in the past. We're conscious that we've had previous decisions that address some of these issues. So some of this is kind of reiterating decisions that have perhaps been forgotten or that are not actually being implemented systematically by the parties, but nevertheless, we think are important collectively to strengthen our frameworks to address illegal trade. And, you know, we're conscious that this decision itself will not be sufficient to do that, but, you know, it's one step towards doing that. The first paragraph, similar to what Cameroon has and the Africa Group has in their draft CRP, and what was also in the EU CRP last year, asks the Ozone Secretariat to prepare a checklist on core features of licensing systems. We see this as something that would be prepared for information purposes, not necessarily something that then would lead to parties being obliged to somehow necessarily include those core features, but we see this as a facilitating tool that the Ozone Secretariat you know, could do. The next few paragraphs are focused on licensing systems. So in paragraph 2, we urge parties that have not yet done so to inform the Secretariat whether their licensing systems cover used, recycled, and reclaimed controlled substances, in addition to new substances. Now, of course, licensing systems cover new substances, and the Secretariat, you know, is advised by parties when such systems are established. But what we understood from the documentation last year is that there are still some parties that don't specify whether these systems also cover used, recycled, and reclaimed controlled substances. And we heard also during the informal meeting that in some cases, actually, this is not done. So if that's not done, you know, that you know, potentially can create an avenue for illegal trade if used and recycled substances are not covered by some regulation or some licensing systems, then that potentially a loophole there that needs to be addressed. But at this point, we don't necessarily know if that is the case, so we're just urging parties just to inform the Secretariat. because it is an obligation under Article 4B that the licensing system should cover these substances. It's not just a voluntary measure. Then the next couple of paragraphs are about parties ensuring that their licensing systems cover controlled substances in transshipment, substances that are re-exported, and substances that are also in free trade zones. So that's basically paragraph 3 and paragraph 4. I won't go into the details specifically of what they ask there, but that's basically what is being covered, because again, these are potentially areas where the coverage, we understand, is not always comprehensive, and therefore could create avenues for illegal trade to take place. Then paragraph 5 encourages the NOUs and customs officers to share data to better track and monitor imports of controlled substances. Paragraph 6 is about encouraging parties to strengthen verification practices for imports and exports, and when feasible, consider the establishment of automated systems and standardized procedures. This is also something that was, I think, suggested in one of the Secretariat's background documents on this issue. A practice that they have observed that some parties have, and we certainly don't think that it should be mandatory. It's not something required by the protocol, but so this is really just an encouragement for parties to consider this. We also want to have something reminding Article 5 parties that the UNEP Compliance Assistance Program is there to help them in the design and implementation of their national licensing systems. The next few paragraphs then, or the rest of the paragraphs, are more about strengthening data reporting. So paragraph 8 is about parties reporting the sources of imports of controlled substances. I think there may be a little bit of an error in the drafting there. So it should be the sources of imports of controlled substances, and to continue reporting on the destination of exports of such substances. Because I think that, the Ozone Secretariat had pointed out that, there are differences sometimes between data reported by one party as imports and another ones by exports. By actually identifying the countries to which substances are exported and the countries that are importing, then it would help to identify, to resolve some of these differences. There may be very good reason for these differences, but again, without having, this kind of detailed information, it's very hard to know, in fact, if actually there is a problem, going on between imports and exports not actually matching. So this is something that we already have decisions on, but the reporting of the sources of imports is voluntary and not done by many parties. So we think that, it should be done. We reflect also in the preamble the decisions that relate to this issue. So that could be referred to by parties. We also, paragraph 9 encourages parties to use the online reporting system for data reported under Article 7. Paragraph 10 requests the Ozone Secretariat to make information available on parties that didn't report data required under Article 7 by the deadline of 30th of September. And the final paragraph is about the Ozone Secretariat and the Fund Secretariat consulting each other on possible options to have a coordinated options to data reporting, because we have heard quite a number of times in the Executive Committee of the Multilateral Fund that for Article 5 parties, it can be sometimes a little bit of an extra burden to be reporting the same data to two different institutions. Perhaps that's the way it's got to be, because these institutions have different roles and deal with different issues. But perhaps there are ways in which this could be coordinated to help, have more mainstream, efficient reporting from Article 5 parties so that they can focus also more on other issues. So that's essentially, the decisions and the CRP, the preamble. We try to be comprehensive in recalling all the different decisions that relate to these issues that have been identified. But it's quite possible that we have forgotten some of them. I mean, as we were looking back, we realized that the parties really have taken many decisions on licensing system, data reporting, and illegal trade in the past. So we realize it's certainly not a new issue, but we think that given the emphasis that we've had on this issue over the past couple of years, and the fruitful discussion we had at the informal meeting last year, it would be important that all this culminates towards some kind of tangible outcome. So hopefully between this CRP and the CRP proposed by the Africa Group, the parties can have quite a comprehensive outcome on this issue this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada, for introduction of the CRP. I will now open the floor for discussions either on the two CRPs that have just been presented or general discussions under this agenda item. The floor is now open for comments, questions, discussions. I have on my list Bangladesh requesting for the floor. Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Bangladesh appreciates the sponsors of both CRP 3 and 4 for their efforts to strengthen licensing systems, enhance customs cooperation, and combat illegal trade in controlled substance. We see these proposals as complementary and support their common objective of strengthening the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. At the same time, we emphasize that any new measures, including reporting requirements, operational procedures or implementation arrangements, should remain voluntary, facilitative, and take into account the national circumstances and capacities of Article 5 parties. Given the limited institutional, technical, and financial capacities of many Article 5 parties, we assume that additional obligations could create a significant implementation burden. We therefore stress that any enhanced activities should be accompanied by adequate technical and financial support through multilateral fund, particularly for digitalization, customs integration, capacity building, and long-term system maintenance. Subject to these considerations, Bangladesh look forward to working constructively with all sponsors to achieve a balanced and practical outcome. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much, Bangladesh, for your comments. I give the floor now to Vanuatu.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Vanuatu thank the proponents of both CRP 3 and CRP 4 for bringing forward practical proposals to strengthen the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. For Vanuatu, an effective licensing system is one of the most important tools for ensuring compliance with the obligations under both the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Amendment. And as small island developing states with limited enforcement resources, our licensing system serves as the first line of defense against illegal trade, while also enabling us to monitor imports, manage national HFC quotas, and ensure that controlled substances entering the country are consistent with the national legislation. We therefore welcome the emphasis placed on strengthening licensing systems through improved verification practices, closer coordination between NOUs and customs, and greater use of automated and digital systems. We also see value in developing guidance on the core features of the effective licensing systems in strengthening capacity building for Article 5 parties. Drawing from our own experience, integrating licensing systems with customs and national single window platforms has significantly improved monitoring, reduced the risk of exceeding national quotas, and enhanced compliance. We believe that promoting practical, interoperable, and cost-effective licensing solutions will greatly benefit many Article 5 parties as well. We therefore support continuous work in this area and encourage that any guidance, software tools, or standard operating procedures developed remain flexible enough to accommodate different national circumstances, capacities, and existing systems, while providing practical support to parties seeking to strengthen their licensing and enforcement frameworks. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, Vanuatu. On my list, I have China and the United States of America. I'll give the floor now to China.
谢谢主席。首先，感谢秘书处更新了关于第一方提交的非法贸易信息汇编文件。中方赞赏各缔约方积极分享非法贸易信息的和最佳实践，这些信息为识别非法贸易模式、加强执法合作提供了宝贵参考。全面实施受控物质许可证制度，有力打击非法贸易，加强数据收集报送工作，对缔约方有效履行议定书十分关键。然而，A5国家在履约能力建设方面仍需获得有效的资金和技术支持。我们认为该议题的讨论应在缔约议定书现有的义务框架内进行，充分考虑各国收控物质管理、法律制度安排等具体情况，避免给缔约方带来不必要的额外负担。应通过多边基金等现有机制，为第5条国家在法律法规修订、部门协调、执法培训、区域合作等方面提供持续支持，帮助其夯实履约基础。我们感谢澳大利亚、加拿大、欧盟、挪威和瑞士联合提交的 CRP 4号文件。我们代表团正在认真研究该提案的内容。我们认为该议题的讨论应该充分考虑各国受控物质管理、法律制度安排等具体情况，避免给缔约方带来不必要的额外负担。例如，我们注意到这个文件中的部分条款涉及到自贸区贸易管控和报告等事项。我们认为自贸区的进出口数据已经涵盖在国家的进出口数据中，没有必要进行单独的区分。目前，秘书处在人力、资金和预算方面已经面临较大的压力，各缔约方，特别是第5条国家，也承担着繁重的履约报告任务。提出新的工作要求，应充分论证其必要性和可行性，确保不给缔约方提供增加不合理的实施负担。谢谢。
Thank you very much, China. I'll give the floor now to the United States.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair, and our thanks to the proponents for raising these issues. We want to note maybe a few things. First and foremost, it is very important to this delegation that we detect, deter, and disrupt any attempts for illegal imports or production of controlled substances. We view that first and foremost as part of our national obligations, and our national regulations and legislation is what guides us in doing this. We do believe that it is important for countries to implement the provisions of Article 4B on licensing systems, and in doing so, that they structure their regulations, recognizing their national laws often will differ from one another. There's always going to be differences in how that is accomplished. And with that in mind, we note, and I believe one of the proponents said this as well, the work of UNEP, of Ozone Action, and the regional network has been really to help allow for some customization and thoughtfulness around how those are happening in different parts of the world, and we believe that is appropriate. We also want to appreciate the updates the Secretariat has provided on illegal trade. We provide information regularly to the Secretariat and appreciate that they have provided these compilations so that we can look for patterns or other things that allow us to better target our illegal trade. We also believe it is important for ozone officers to work with customs offices to ensure that we are sharing data as appropriate. With that in mind, and in looking at these two different CRPs, there are many aspects of the CRPs that we think are quite useful and we'd like to discuss with the proponents. There were also elements that gave us perhaps a little bit of pause as to whether or not they are quite suited to the intent or whether or not there may be better ways to think about it. There were a few asks that we saw as expanding the work of the Ozone Secretariat or its functions in ways in which we think that there may already be existing, other existing entities like Ozone Action or others that are already doing that work, so it may be a little duplicative to us. There may be also instances where some of the asks do seem to be outside the scope. But as a general matter, there are a number of things here that we found that we could support or we would want to be interested in having discussions on to better understand what the proponents are looking to achieve. With that in mind and noting there are two CRPs, both of which have multiple operating paragraphs, we do think that a discussion about this would be welcome and we would be happy to join. We'll leave in the hands of our co-chair how best to do that, whether that's some sort of group or in the margins. We would be happy to participate in any discussion about either or both of the CRPs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, United States. On my list, I have the European Union, United Kingdom, and India. I give the floor now to the European Union.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We also like to thank the Ozone Secretariat for their great work in the compilation of the documents on illegal trade. As a co-sponsor of one of the draft CRPs, we would like also to thank parties for the views they expressed today on our CRP, but also on this topic in general. Well, the emergence of not one, but two proposals on this topic is an encouraging sign, at least that's how we see it. It demonstrates a need to further discuss the topic of strengthening of the Montreal Protocol institutions, so this is a good sign. We would also like to welcome the CRP submitted by Cameroon on behalf of the African group, and we are really encouraged to see that there are some ideas that are common with our CRP and that have been discussed already for several years in this group, including some elements from the EU's CRP discussed last year, so this is positive also. And of course, we stand ready to work closely with all parties on both CRPs and try to deliver a meaningful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, European Union. I now give the floor to United Kingdom.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. The United Kingdom thanks the proponents of CRP3 and CRP4 on this matter. We agree with the intent of providing parties with additional support to further strengthen implementation of the Montreal Protocol. We also recall the valuable discussions held during last year's informal meeting on facilitating implementation, which highlighted the benefits of sharing experiences, lessons learned, and practical approaches taken by parties. At the same time, we believe that it is important to recognise that parties operate in different national circumstances and may therefore take different approaches to meeting our obligations, including with respect to licensing systems, data gathering and reporting systems, and efforts to address illegal trade. We therefore believe that in providing further support to parties, it will be beneficial to draw on a variety of approaches taken by parties, while retaining the flexibility for a party to implement protocol obligations in a way which is most effective in its national context. We look forward to engaging further in discussions on this matter with other parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United Kingdom. I have India and Saudi Arabia on my list. I give the floor now to India.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We thank Canada and others for introducing CRP4 and Cameroon for introducing CRP3 on behalf of Africa Group. Our observations are with respect to CRP4. We have noted that there is a significant proposal to make it mandatory for all parties to report the sources of their imports of controlled substances. Currently, this is voluntary. While this could help identify data discrepancies, it creates a substantial new administrative and reporting burden for national ozone units in Article 5 countries, which often operate with limited resources. The benefit of this mandatory requirement needs to be clearly demonstrated before it is adopted. The reporting of import sources should remain voluntary. Article 5 countries should be encouraged and supported through capacity building to improve their data collection, but it should not become a mandatory compliance obligation. The CRP also encourages several advanced practices, such as controlling substances in free trade zones, establishing automated cross-checking systems, and database coordination. While these are good practices, implementing them requires significant technical capacity, financial investment, and interagency coordination, which may not be readily available in many Article 5 countries. These should remain as encouragements rather than becoming expectations. Instead of adding new reporting requirements, the focus should be on strengthening the existing capabilities of Article 5 countries. This includes continued support from the Multilateral Fund and the Compliance Assistance Program to implement the systems that are best suited to their national circumstances. A one-size-fits-all approach is often ineffective and burdensome. The diversity of national legal and administrative frameworks must be respected. The request for the Ozone Secretariat to publicize a list of parties that do not submit their data on time, while intended to promote compliance, could be perceived as a punitive measure. It does not address the underlying reasons for late reporting, which in Article 5 countries can often be due to capacity constraints. Considering the above, we stand ready to engage in further discussions on the matter. And we do hope that the CRP would be revised to ensure its provisions are enabling and supportive rather than prescriptive and burdensome for Article 5 countries. At the risk of repeating myself, the emphasis should be on providing financial and technical assistance, not on adding new mandatory reporting obligations. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, India. The floor is still open for discussion, and if you could also kindly indicate if you want to take the floor, so I add you onto my list. And during the interventions, possible suggestions on the way forward are welcome. I now give the floor to Saudi Arabia, and then after that we'll have Bahrain. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia wishes to thank parties who submitted the CRPs and would like to comment on the concerned CRPs. On CRP3, we stress that the proposed measures must respect national laws, circumstances, and institutional mandates, and must not create additional obligations. The Secretariat's role should be limited to compiling voluntary and non-binding national practices, rather than developing harmonized procedures affecting national legal and enforcement systems. Any licensing checklists should be voluntary and reflect national legal and administrative frameworks. Work on licensing software should be undertaken through the Executive Committee and address cybersecurity, compatibility with existing systems, and national ownership and control of data. Capacity assessment should reflect national circumstances, while the involvement of other international organizations must remain subject to their mandates and available resources. On the CRP4, we stress that the proposed measures must remain within the requirements of Article 4B and 7 and must not create additional reporting or compliance obligations. Any Secretariat compilation or licensing systems should be non-exhaustive based on national examples and should not establish criteria for assessing compliance. Information concerning used, recycled, and reclaimed substances, transshipments, re-export, and sources of imports should remain voluntary. We request the deletion of the provision on free trade zones, as neither Article 4B nor Article 7 establishes a separate reporting obligation for such a trade, and the proposal would create a new reporting category without an agreed legal basis or methodology. Data sharing and verification measures should also respect national sovereignty, national circumstances, and available resources. We thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. Now I give the floor to Bahrain.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة المشاركة، وأود أن أشكر مقدمي وراق المؤتمر 3 و4 وعلى غرار من سبقني من المندوبين. لدي تعليقات على ورقة المؤتمر الرابعة، مع شكري مرة أخرى إلى مقدمي الدول المقدمة لهذه الورقة. أولا، هذا الوفد يؤيد تماما كل ما تفضل به المندوب الموقر للهند، وكذلك ما سبق في ورقة المؤتمر 3 ما تقدم به أيضا المندوب الموقر للمملكة العربية السعودية الشقيقة. وأضيف فيما يخص ورقة المؤتمر الرابع أنه أبرز ما يشغل هذا الوفد يتمثل أن المقترح يمثل أكثر أهمية في جعل الإبلاغ عن مصادر واردات المواد الخاضعة للرقابة إلزامية لجميع الأطراف، في حين أن هذا الإجراء يتم حاليا على أساس طوعي. وهذه الخطوة قد تسهم في كشف حالات عدم اتساق البيانات، فإنها كما تفضلت مندوبة الهند أنها ستضيف عبئا إداريا ومتطلبات إبلاغ جديدة على وحدات الأوزون في بلدان المادة الخامسة. كما ينبغي أن يظل الإبلاغ عن مصادر الواردات كما هو إجراء طوعيا، ويمكن تشجيع الأطراف العاملة بموجب المادة الخامسة ودعمها من خلال برامج بناء القدرات لتعزيز نظم جمع البيانات وتحسين جودتها دون تحويل ذلك إلى التزام يرتبط بالامتثال. في ضوء ما سبق، ينبغي مراجعة مشروع المقرر بما يضمن أن تكون أحكامه تمكينية وداعمة للأطراف العاملة بموجب المادة الخامسة، بدلاً من أن تكون إلزامية أو مرهقة إدارياً لا يمكن تحقيقها. شكراً سيدة الرئيسة المشاركة.
Thank you very much, Bahrain. I have 3 requests for the floor on my list. That is Colombia, Lebanon, and Nigeria. I turn now to Colombia. You have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Bueno, Colombia agradece a los patrocinadores de la presentación de este proyecto de decisión y desea reiterar su firme compromiso con el fortalecimiento de los sistemas nacionales de licencias como una herramienta fundamental para prevenir y combatir el comercio ilegal de sustancias controladas. Al mismo tiempo, mi delegación considera importante que cualquier decisión que adoptemos preserve la flexibilidad que ha caracterizado la implementación del protocolo y reconozca las diferentes realidades jurídicas, institucionales y operativas de las partes. En este sentido, estimamos que las herramientas que eventualmente elabore la Secretaría, como listas de verificación u orientaciones, deberían tener un carácter estrictamente informativo y voluntario. Los sistemas nacionales de licencias responden a marcos jurídicos propios y en muchos casos comprenden disposiciones legislativas, procedimientos aduaneros y mecanismos de coordinación interinstitucional que no pueden reflejarse plenamente en un formato único. Asimismo, consideramos importante que el texto reconozca las circunstancias nacionales al abordar aspectos relacionados con el alcance de los sistemas de licencias. En algunos países, incluido Colombia, el marco jurídico vigente determina el tratamiento de determinadas sustancias y define la competencia de las autoridades nacionales. Por ello, las decisiones que adoptemos deben mantener la flexibilidad necesaria para respetar dichas particularidades. Mi delegación también considera que las medidas orientadas a fortalecer la trazabilidad, la automatización de procesos, el intercambio de información o el seguimiento de operaciones comerciales requieren capacidades técnicas, infraestructura y recursos financieros sostenibles. En consecuencia, sería importante que el proyecto refleje que estos esfuerzos estén sujetos a la disponibilidad de medios adecuados para su implementación y no generen expectativas que excedan las capacidades nacionales. Finalmente, Colombia estima que cualquier iniciativa en materia de reporte e intercambio de información debería contribuir a simplificar y facilitar la implementación del protocolo, evitando la creación de nuevas cargas administrativas o de reporte para las partes. El objetivo común debe ser fortalecer la cooperación y el intercambio de buenas prácticas, preservando al mismo tiempo la diversidad de los sistemas nacionales y el enfoque facilitador que ha caracterizado históricamente al Protocolo de Montreal. Esta delegación permanece abierta a continuar el diálogo y a trabajar constructivamente para alcanzar un texto que fortalezca la prevención del comercio ilegal, respetando las circunstancias nacionales y las capacidades de todas las partes. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Colombia. I give the floor now to Lebanon.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Lebanon would like as well to thank the parties for preparing CRP4 and for their efforts to strengthen licensing systems and address illegal trade under the Montreal Protocol. We align ourselves with the interventions delivered by distinguished delegates from India, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Colombia. However, Lebanon also recognizes that the effectiveness of licensing system ultimately depends on capacity of parties to implement them effectively. And in this regard, our priority should be to strengthen the national implementation through technical cooperation, institutional capacity, on building and adequate financial support. Many Article 5 parties continue to operate under resource and institutional constraints. The challenge is often not the absence of reporting requirements, but rather ensuring that the national authorities have the necessary tools, trained personnel, and integrated systems to generate reliable and timely information. For this reason, we are of the view that the focus should be on equipping parties with the financial resources and technical assistance and institutional capacity needed to implement effective licensing system, rather than expanding mandatory reporting requirements. Strong implementation is achieved by empowering parties with the necessary tools and the necessary support needed, and not by increasing the administrative burden and obligations. Strengthening implementation should also come before expanding reporting requirements. If parties are expected at some point to provide additional information, we should therefore first ensure that they have the necessary resources available and to use them effectively. We encourage a balanced approach that focuses on enabling compliance and strengthening the implementation on the ground, and to reduce extra administrative burdens where possible on the parties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lebanon. Before I give the floor to Nigeria, I would like to remind parties that if there's any party wishing to take the floor, please press the button, and then after the interventions, we will propose a way forward. I give the floor now to Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you very much, Co-Chair. We wish to thank Cameroon for introducing CRP3 on strengthening Montreal Protocol operations on behalf of the African Group. We believe the CRP will be instrumental in supporting A5 parties to obtain additional information that will facilitate their compliance with the Montreal Protocol obligations. We therefore support the CRP and will be pleased to be part of its discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. I don't see, oh, I do. There's two more parties requesting the floor. I have on my list Togo and Israel. I give the floor now to Togo.
Merci, Madame la coprésidente. Comme il s'agit de notre première prise de parole, nous tenons à exprimer notre profonde gratitude au gouvernement de la Thaïlande pour l'accueil chaleureux qui nous a été réservé. Nous adressons également nos sincères remerciements au secrétariat de l'Ozone pour la qualité de l'organisation de cette réunion. Comme l'ont souligné les délégations qui nous ont précédés, nous voulons remercier également les co-auteurs de ces CRP et nous souhaitons exprimer notre soutien, notamment au CRP 3 présenté par le Cameroun relatif au renforcement de la mise en œuvre du protocole de Montréal. Ce texte apporte des réponses concrètes aux défis liés au suivi des substances contrôlées, à la lutte contre le commerce illicite et à l'amélioration des systèmes de licence. Nous attachons une grande importance au renforcement des capacités nationales, à la coopération entre les parties et à l'utilisation d'outils harmonisés pour assurer la mise en œuvre efficace du dit protocole. Nous saluons particulièrement les dispositions relatives à l'élaboration des procédures opérationnelles standards, à l'amélioration des systèmes de licence et à l'appui en matière de formation pour les parties visées à l'article 5. Pour ces raisons, nous restons favorables pour continuer la procédure de travaux pour la mise en œuvre de ce CRP. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Togo. I give the floor now to Israel.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Israel would like to thank the parties for introducing CRPs 3 and 4 and for the compilation of information on illegal trade under the Montreal Protocol provided by the Secretariat. Israel agrees that this is an important issue and would be happy to participate in further discussions on the matter. Israel also wishes to note the UNEP and UNODC current work on the comprehensive report on illegal trade under the Montreal Protocol, which currently aims to map national frameworks, practices, and international cooperation mechanisms. In this regard, it may be useful to consider whether there is any overlap between the various efforts and the proposals laid in the CRPs. This could help ensure that the different initiatives are mutually reinforcing and informed by a comprehensive understanding of the nature and scope of the challenges posed by illegal trade under the Montreal Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenya. Oh, sorry, Israel. That's because Kenya is next on my list. I have two requests for the floor. That's Kenya and Argentina. I would now like to propose that after Argentina, we'll propose a way forward. So we'll have those two speakers and then propose a way forward. Thank you for your understanding. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Kenya thanks the Ozone Secretariat for the documents prepared under this agenda item, and also thanks the proponents of the CRPs, both CRPs, for facilitating the dialogue on strengthening the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. Kenya supports efforts to strengthen national licensing and enforcement systems, enhance information sharing among parties, and improve cooperation in preventing and combating illegal trade in controlled substances and equipment. While we recognize that effective licensing systems are fundamental to the successful implementation of the Montreal Protocol, any measures to streamline reporting should reduce administrative burden while maintaining the quality and usefulness of information provided by parties. Kenya also underscores the importance of continued capacity building, technical assistance, and information exchange, particularly for Article 5 parties, to strengthen institutional capacity and support effective implementation and enforcement. Lastly, we look forward to continued discussions on this matter with a view to identifying practical and balanced approaches that further strengthen the institutions of the Montreal Protocol without burdening Article 5 countries while recognizing parties' national circumstances and legal and institutional frameworks. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, Kenya. Argentina, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora copresidente.
Por supuesto que quisiéramos agradecer a los proponentes de los 2 CRP que se han presentado. En relación con las presentaciones de estos CRP y mucho de lo que he escuchado desde que empezamos esta sesión, tengo que reconocer que estoy un poco sorprendida y es probable que lo que vaya a decir sea un poco polémico. Argentina tiene un sistema de licencias desde hace 25 años que está operando y cuando leí lo que se estaba proponiendo, francamente creo que tenemos todo cubierto, casi todo cubierto, es en lo que se refiere al CRP 4. El CRP 3 me resulta un poquito más confuso en algunos aspectos en cuanto tiene que ver directamente a lo que era el sistema de licencias solicitado por el Protocolo de Montreal. Yo quisiera como síntesis dar una conclusión general. Me gustaría que de todas estas propuestas y de las discusiones que surjan, se trabaje con mucho cuidado, porque aquellos que tenemos sistemas de licencia que están operando desde hace muchos años y sin inconvenientes, y habiendo cubierto todo lo que está por lo menos en el CRP4, el 3 sigo insistiendo que lo encuentro quizás un poquitito más conflictivo porque agrega cosas que creo que sí están fuera de lo que era el sistema de licencias. Tratar de que realmente trabajemos seriamente y que no se propongan cosas que sean muy diferentes a los que se ha venido trabajando durante tantos años. Es decir, 25 años para nosotros es mucho tiempo. A mí me da la sensación de lo que he escuchado, que tenemos diferencias muy grandes entre las partes a este protocolo en cómo hemos asumido el compromiso de tener un sistema de licencias y que cumpliera con todo lo que se solicitaba. Por lo tanto, quisiera que seamos bastante cautos al momento de llegar a conclusiones y propuestas que obliguen a las partes a hacer cambios sustanciales a sus sistemas de licencias sin que sean necesarias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Argentina. I noticed a request for the floor from Qatar, but I had mentioned earlier that after Argentina, we will propose a way forward. So I'd like to apologize to Qatar, but now I'll propose a way forward. So the proposal from the co-chairs is to set up a contact group for further discussion of this item, because we can tell from the general statements that were made that there is general interest to discuss the 2 CRPs that have been posted, as well as other matters on this item. The co-facilitators for the contact group are Paul from Austria and Liana from Armenia. Is that an agreeable way forward by the parties? I see no request for the floor, so that is the way we will proceed. I see Qatar still insists they want to take the floor. Qatar, you have the floor.
شكرا سعادة الرئيس المشارك. بما أن الكلمة الأولى لدولة قطر، أود أن أتقدم بخلص الشكر والتقدير إلى مملكة تايلاند على كرم الضيافة وحسن الاستقبال والتنظيم المتميز لهذا الاجتماع وتهيئة الأجواء لإنجاح هذه الأعمال. بهذه المناسبة نظرا أن نؤيد بما أنكم أحدتم للفريق اتصال، فكانت وجهتنا تأييد المملكة العربية السعودية والبحرين بخصوص أن تكون البيانات بيانات طوعية حسب إمكانيات والدعم الفني والتقني. وشكرا سعادة الرئيس.
Thank you very much, Katal, for the comments. Again, we have set up a contact group, and the co-facilitators are Paul from Austria and Liana from Armenia as a way forward. Thank you so much. I now hand over the floor to my co-chair to continue with the next item.
Thank you very much, Igobi, for that. In the natural order, we would come to agenda item 8, but we've had a request to delay agenda item 8 until tomorrow. So we will come to agenda item 9 now. Delegates will recall that we had, the Secretariat's already on top of it. Delegates will recall that we had 3 additional matters raised under agenda item 9, and we'll take them in the order that they were proposed from the floor. The first agenda item was in relation to the participation of the Central Asian states in the Eastern European Group. This was placed on the agenda by Kazakhstan on behalf of Central Asian states. There's also an associated CRP, CRP1, which has been posted on the portal for since Monday. So I would like to now turn the floor to Kazakhstan to introduce the CRP and the issue. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, dear co-chairs, distinguished delegates, representative of our zone secretariat, ladies and gentlemen. During the 37th meeting of the parties, some delegations proposed to exclude Central Asian states from the Eastern European Group. This initiative is lack of legal basis and contradicts to established practice in Montreal Protocol, the principles of the United Nations and international law. Since 1991, no member state has raised any formal objection to the continued recognition of Central Asian states as members of the Eastern European Group. In this regard, Central Asia's uninterrupted engagement in the group for more than 3 decades reflects acquired rights and legitimate expectation which merit due respect under international law. Any initiative to recompose regional groups within Montreal Protocol represents a clear violation of equal rights of UN member states, especially electoral, and undermines the very spirit of cooperation that defines the process. Unilateral actions are inconsistent with the principles of fairness, inclusiveness, and consensus that have long guided the Montreal Protocol. Dear colleagues, I want to refer to just yesterday's ex-MOP 6. Central Asian states, despite all the situation that we are witnessing since last MOP 37, or maybe it was raised up in MOP 35 before, we made our best efforts to reach consensus and don't bring the situation to the voting to undermine the spirit of Montreal Protocol, which is being beaconed as the most successful MEA for decades. And as was mentioned by my colleague distinguished from Uzbekistan, yesterday Central Asia did best to sacrifice, to take care of spirit of collaboration and compromise, as was mentioned before, but many of our co-chairs and distinguished delegates. And in this regard, we placed CRP, and I want to reiterate again, the CRP was put only with one reason, not to establish any new practice or precedent, just to allow us not to go back again and again this issue, because it was started in MOP 35, as we found out earlier, and its attempt to leave this matter behind and go further. And with that, we humbly request, ask all the delegates to support the document, and we can go further. And again, just a reference, ex-MOP 6, actually, the situation was exactly occurred because of this situation. So for the sake of Montreal Protocol, for the sake of our spirit of collaboration, compromise, cooperation, we believe that CRP needs to be supported and sent to the MOP 38 for adoption without setting any precedent. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Kazakhstan, for introducing CRP1. I now open the floor for any comments or reactions in respect of CRP1. Thank you very much. I have Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan on my list. I first give the floor to Kyrgyzstan. You have the floor.
Dear co-chairs, dear delegates, dear colleagues, firstly, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the government of Thailand for its warm hospitality and to the Secretariat for the excellent organization of this meeting. The Kyrgyz Republic has carefully considered the views expressed regarding the possible review of the existing regional cooperation arrangements. In this regard, we would like to make the following observations. The countries of Central Asia are currently active and constructive members of the Europe and Central Asia network, and continue to make a meaningful contribution to the implementation of the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Amendment. Our region has demonstrated strong cooperation in the areas of capacity building, strengthening licensing system, combating illegal trade in controlled substance, and promoting the adoption of environmentally friendly technologies. Dear colleagues, dear Madam Co-Chair, most importantly, it's within the regional network that a strong institutional framework for cooperation among RAHP associations and technical experts has been established and continued to develop. This cooperation has fostered the exchange of expertise, strengthened regional capacity, and contributed significantly to the effective implementation of the Montreal Protocol across the region. Therefore, before considering any proposals to modify the existing regional cooperation framework, we believe it's essential to obtain a clear answer to one simple question. What specific implementation challenge under the Montreal Protocol has arisen as a result of participation of Central Asian countries in ECA network? As United States representatives and West European countries representatives and other Asian countries yesterday said the Montreal Protocol needs to implementing effectively. go ahead. If such a challenge exists, it should be substantiated by evidence, objective, analysis, and consultation with all of the countries of this region. If no such evidence has been presented, then the following question naturally arises. How will the proposed change contribute to a more effective implementation of the obligations under the Montreal Protocol and Kigali Amendment? The Kyrgyz Republic believes that the effectiveness of regional mechanisms should be assessed not on the basis of geographical, and please note, or political considerations, but solely on their ability to facilitate the achievement of the objectives of the Montreal Protocol. At present, the countries of Central Asia have coordinated position endorsed at the ministerial level and regard the current framework of cooperation within the ECA network as effective, valuable, and fully responsive to their interests of the countries of the region. They remain open to constructive dialogue. However, we believe that any change should be based on demonstrated need, broad consensus among the countries concerned, and clear benefits for the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. Dear colleagues, dear Madam Co-Chair, I would like to include my question to record to our protocol this question. What I'm again asking for all of them. What specific implementation challenge under the Montreal Protocol has arisen as a result of participation of Central Asian countries in our East European regional group? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyrgyzstan, for your intervention, and indeed all views will be reflected in the report of the meeting, including your question. I turn now to Turkmenistan. You have the floor.
Спасибо большое, господа председатель. Уважаемые сопредседатели, уважаемые делегаты, уважаемые коллеги. Туркменистан придает большое значение международному сотрудничеству в области охраны окружающей среды и особенно в области выполнения обязательств по Монреальскому протоколу и его поправкам. В этой связи наша страна считает крайне важным сохранение эффективных региональных механизмов сотрудничества. Региональная группа Восточной Европы и Центральной Азии на протяжении многих лет служит важной платформой для обмена опытом и технической информацией, координации действий и укрепления потенциала стран в выполнении обязательств по Монреальскому протоколу и Кигалийской поправке. Страны Центральной Азии, включая Туркменистан, естественно, на протяжении более 3 десятилетий принимают активное участие в работе данной региональной группы, участвует в обсуждениях, выдвижении кандидатур и избрании представителей в органы Монреальского протокола. Эта сложившаяся практика является важным элементом равноправного и инклюзивного участия всех сторон в процессах принятия решений. Как вы знаете, данный вопрос рассматривался в ноябре 2025 года в ходе 37-й встречи сторон Монреальского протокола. В связи с отсутствием консенсуса окончательное решение принято не было. По итогам обсуждения было решено продолжить консультации и принять решение по данному вопросу в ходе 6-й внеочередной встречи сторон. Все это отражено в докладе 37-го совещания сторон Монреальского протокола. Туркменистан исходит из того, что любые изменения, затрагивающие участие стран в региональных группах, должны осуществляться исключительно на основе прозрачного диалога, консенсуса и с учетом мнений всех заинтересованных сторон. Исключение стран Центральной Азии из региональной группы без их согласия может ограничить их возможности участвовать в выдвижении и избрании представителей в руководящие и вспомогательные органы Монреальского протокола. Это также не соответствует принципам суверенного равенства, инклюзивности и справедливого представительства государств. Кроме того, мы считаем необходимым сохранять дух партнерства, взаимного уважения и солидарности, который на протяжении десятилетий, я подчеркиваю, обеспечивает успех Монреальского протокола как одного из наиболее эффективных международных экологических соглашений. Вопрос регионального представителя не должен становиться вопросом по предметам политизации. В этой связи Туркменистан поддерживает позицию стран Центральной Азии о необходимости сохранения их полноценного участия в региональной группе Восточной Европы и Центральной Азии. Мы призываем продолжить конструктивные консультации и найти согласованное решение, основанное на консенсусе, сложившейся многолетней практике и уважении суверенного равенства государств. Туркменистан готов и далее конструктивно участвовать в обсуждениях, направленных на укрепление сотрудничества в рамках Монреальского протокола. Уважаемые коллеги, хотелось бы отметить один момент в этом деле. Вы знаете, мы всегда гордились тем, что именно дух Монреальского протокола, в отличие от всех подразделений ООН, где представлены все наши центральноазиатские страны, всегда стоял выше, мы приводили его в пример. Но на данный момент именно здесь у нас возникают вот такие вопросы. Нам бы очень хотелось, чтобы эти вопросы были закрыты и больше не возникали. Поэтому мы предлагаем найти очень правильное решение. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much, Turkmenistan. After Uzbekistan, I now have on my list Ireland, Bahrain, Czechia and Azerbaijan. Sorry, I should have said Ireland for the EU. I apologize for that. Uzbekistan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Distinguished delegates, the Republic of Uzbekistan attaches great importance to the effective, inclusive and predictable implementation of the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol. The success of the ozone regime has always been based on cooperation, mutual respect, and the equal participation of all parties. For more than 3 decades, the Central Asian countries have participated in the work on the Montreal Protocol within the established practice of the Eastern European Group. This has enabled the countries of our region to take part in consultations, nominations, elections, and representation arrangements under the protocol in a predictable and balanced manner. This long-standing practice also reflects the historical context in which the current regional group structure was established, as well as the principle of continuity following the independence of the Central Asian countries. Uzbekistan fully respects the rights of all parties and regional groups to hold consultations and express their views. At the same time, any change affecting the participations, representations, or nomination rights of states should have a clear legal and procedural basis and should be considered through a transparent intergovernmental process among the parties. Uzbekistan position is not aimed at confrontation. On the contrary, we support a fair, legally sound, and consensus-oriented approach that preserves trust, predictability, and the inclusive nature of the Montreal Protocol. In this regard, Uzbekistan considers it necessary to maintain the existing practice of participation of the Central Asian countries within the Eastern European Group, including relevant consultations, nominations, processes, elections, and representations arrangements under the Montreal Protocol. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, Uzbekistan. I now give the floor to Ireland on behalf of the EU.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
The EU and its member states thinks that this is not the right forum to discuss regional groups. It is not a matter for the MOP to decide on the composition of regional groups. These groups operate on an informal basis. Regional groups should decide on membership amongst themselves and how to address nominations. Any changes require consensus in the regional group. It is for each regional group to determine when to meet, which states are members of that group, which state convenes its meetings, and how the group operates, including how it selects nominees for the Montreal Protocol. A MOP decision on membership would not be in line with the UN custom and practice and might set a precedent that could have unforeseen implications for other regional groups and or other multilateral environmental agreements. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, EU. I now give the floor to Bahrain.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيس المشاركة، والشكر مقدم إلى مقدمي هذه الورقة. هذا الوفد بعد الاستماع باهتمام إلى المداخلات التي تفضلت بها الوفود التي سبقتني، أولا يدعم المقترح المعروض من قبل الدول المقدمة لهذه الورقة، وثانيا تساءل بشكل كبير أن الوضع الذي أصبحت فيه هذه الدول ليس وضعا اختياريا، ولعله ما وصلنا له اليوم من وضع قد جربنا في السابق أن بعض التعديلات أو بعض الدول غيرت من مجموعة إلى مجموعة أخرى. لو فتحنا اليوم هذا الأمر معناه أننا سنعيد فتح كل هذه الملفات من جديد، وهذا أمر صعب وغير محبب، ولا أعتقد بأن الأطراف يودون أن نعود لمناقشة وفتح المجموعات بعد كل هذه العقود من العمل المشترك. لذلك هذا الوفد يرى أن تبقى هذه المجموعة نظرا إلى التقارب الجغرافي، إلى التقارب اللغوي كما هي، وأن تحقق امتثالها والتزامها كما هو، وكذلك تعطى وتمنح جميع الصلاحيات التي يقرها أو يستحقها كل طرف بموجب بروتوكول مونتريال. شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة.
Thank you very much, Bahrain. I give the floor now to Czechia.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and as it is for the first time Czechia takes the floor, we'd like to thank the Kingdom of Thailand for hosting the open-ended working group and yesterday the ex-MOP meeting, and thank the Secretariat for organizing those meetings. Czechia fully associates itself with the intervention made by the EU and its member states. In addition, I like to clarify that no country ever sought to change the membership of the UN regional groups. We have always carefully based our actions on the neutral advice provided by the Ozone Secretariat to us, and that advice, neutral advice, everybody can find in the summary background information, provided by the Ozone Secretariat in relation to these meetings. So there you can see the complete list of the Eastern European states. So everybody can verify who is in this list, and I repeat, no country ever sought to change that list. Finally, I like to underline that our party has always strived for our positive contributions to the Montreal Protocol processes, which, for example, was demonstrated by serving as a reliable and impartial and responsible member on the implementation committee for the past 2 years, or most recently was demonstrated by our constructive approach in relation to the elections held yesterday at the XMOB 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Czechia, and thank you for reminding us about the paper that the Secretariat prepared for the information of parties, which has been on the website for some time now. I now turn the floor to Azerbaijan. You have the floor.
Azerbaijan would like to underline that under the Montreal Protocol, there is an established practice of participation of Central Asian countries within the Eastern European Group, which forms a fruitful exchange among our countries, contributing actively alongside the Eastern European Group to its processes. Azerbaijan would also highlight the geographical realities within our regions, as well as the long-standing historical, economical, and environmental connections, including close links with the South Caucasus region and shared experiences in the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. Azerbaijan also notes that the regional classifications are not applied uniformly and may differ among multilateral environmental agreements. Therefore, Azerbaijan considers that established practice under the Montreal Protocol should guide consideration of this matter. We support CRP proposed by the Central Asian countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azerbaijan. On my list now, I have Canada, Australia, the Russian Federation, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Kyrgyzstan again, and China. I now give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. And at the onset, I'd like to thank the countries of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan. Sorry, I lost the actual proposal here. Just give me a second. I've been having some trouble. Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan for CRP1. We recognize that the proposal reflects long-standing concerns regarding the participation of certain Central Asian countries within the Eastern European Regional Group. And we acknowledge that the proposal reflects genuine concerns about not being represented in a regional group. From what we have heard and understood at this meeting and also previously, there's an understanding from these countries that historically under the Montreal Protocol, they have participated within the Eastern European groups and that they have held positions, for instance, positions on the Bureau of the Montreal Protocol and of the Vienna Convention, representing the Eastern European group, and indeed they have. That's clear from previous meetings and from the background documentation prepared by the Secretariat. We also understand that there's another view that believes that under the UN, these countries are not categorized as belonging to the Eastern European group, but are part of the Asia-Pacific group, that geographically these countries are in Asia, and that under other forums, under MEAs, generally these countries participate as part of the Asia-Pacific group. So we understand here that there's two views, and we think it's very important to realize that there's legitimacy in both of these positions. You know, this is not a question of one party being right and one party being wrong. This is a situation that has been created because there are two different ways in which one can look at this issue. And it's not for us to say which is the right way to look at it. Canada has no objections on these parties being part of the Eastern European group as full members. We have no objections on them being part of the Asia Pacific group, if that was a possibility as well. It's just we don't see it as our business to be intervening or to be deciding on this. So we do not support the MOP intervening on how parties determine the membership or composition of their regional groups, or the adoption of a formal decision recognizing the membership of particular states within a regional group. We consider such matters are best resolved through ongoing dialogue and consultations among the interested parties, consistent with long-standing practices under the Montreal Protocol. For 40 years, issues of that nature have been addressed at the margins among interested parties rather than through formal decisions at the meeting of the parties, and we do think that it's very important to continue this approach. If we were each time as a MOP trying to decide who belongs in which regional groups, this could create problems for how we proceed from now on. So this is not a precedent that we hope you understand that we would want to be setting. So we know that parties concerned have tried to discuss this issue. We're conscious that the Eastern European group has met this morning, and we were grateful of the progress that they made. Sorry, I think that was yesterday morning, actually. The progress that they made in proposing a new candidate for the implementation committee, and we know that these discussions are continuing to take place. But I think they're just going to have to make an effort and continue to try to have this dialogue and find this solution, because even though we sympathize with the problems and we recognize there's a problem here, we don't think that it's going to be fruitful for the meeting of the parties to be the ones intervening and deciding on this issue. That said, if people are interested in discussing this issue with us at the margins, and if there's any ways in which we can be helpful in facilitating this discussion, then Canada is certainly ready to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada, and I'm sure your offer of assistance is appreciated. I now turn the floor to Australia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We appreciate the CRP introduced by the proponents of CRP1. For this party, we note that the information provided by the Secretariat in its background document concludes that it is for each regional member to determine when to meet, which parties are its members, and which member convenes its meeting, and how the group operates, including how it selects its nominees for Montreal Protocol bodies. Australia considers the issue of membership of the EEG is an issue for the group to determine itself. However, we note, as a principle of fairness, all countries should be able to take part in regional group discussions, however those groups are constituted and operate. We don't consider it that the meeting of parties should be taking decisions on membership of regional groups for many of the reasons outlined by colleagues from the EU in particular. However, we note that Central Asian states have been nominated in the past to represent the EEG on Conference of Parties and MOP Bureau, and we also note the recent nomination of Kazakhstan to the EXCOM representing the EEG. We encourage the EEG and also the Asia Pacific Group to continue consultations with a view to concluding a way forward that allows Central Asian states to be part of a regional group operating under the Montreal Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. I now turn the floor to the Russian Federation.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Прежде всего, хотели бы выразить поддержку странам Центральной Азии в их стремлении оставаться в составе Восточноевропейской группы. За более чем 35-летнюю историю Монреальского протокола они внесли очень большой вклад в реализацию целей озоновых соглашений. Поддерживаем выступление представителя Бахрейна о необходимости сохранения статуса КВО в составе региональных групп в рамках озоновых соглашений. Не можем согласиться с позицией Чехии о том, что список Восточноевропейской группы в отношении Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН должен приниматься в рамках озоновых соглашений. Желание центральноазиатских стран в рамках Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН перейти в состав азиатской группы – это их было суверенное решение, которое ни в коем разе не может автоматически распространяться на все другие договора и соглашения. Озоновые соглашения – это самостоятельные юридические документы. И исторически центральноазиатские страны всегда в рамках этих документов входили в состав Восточноевропейской группы, в которой они хотят и имеют полное право оставаться. Не можем согласиться с выступлением Ирландии от имени Евросоюза о том, что вопрос о составе региональных групп должен решаться на основе консенсуса в рамках, как я понял, пленарного заседания. Решение о том, оставаться в составе Восточноевропейской группы, либо перейти в состав какой-либо другой группы, это исключительная прерогатива стран. Еще раз подчеркиваю, прерогатива тех стран, которые находятся в одной группе и либо хотят в ней оставаться, либо они могут принять решение о переходе. Насколько мы понимаем, это было четко заявлено сегодня на пленарном заседании, так же, как и в рамках заседаний нашей региональной группы. Все 5 стран Центральной Азии, ранее входившие и входящие в состав Восточноевропейской группы, не хотят вносить какие-либо изменения в эту ситуацию, хотят оставаться в этой группе и имеют на это полное право. Поэтому мы не понимаем, почему эта дискуссия происходит. На наш взгляд, это нарушает суверенные права стран, и хотели бы иметь четкую позицию секретариата по вопросу, который мы сейчас обсуждаем. В отсутствии желания, вопрос заключается в следующем. Может ли кто-то навязать стране необходимость перейти в состав другой группы, если данная страна этого не желает? Спасибо, госпожа председатель.
Thank you very much, Russian Federation. I turn the floor now to Lebanon.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Lebanon would like to express its support to the proposal presented in CRP1. We believe that this proposal will strengthen the cooperation and ensure the continued and effective participation of all parties that work in the Montreal Protocol. The Montreal Protocol has consistently relied on continuity and a well-established institutional arrangement to ensure its effective functioning. We consider that this proposal is fully consistent with the long-standing approach. And also, as demonstrated yesterday, the ability of parties to reach consensus remains one of the defining characteristics of this treaty. Let us build on that achievement by supporting arrangements that promote equal participation and to preserve institutional continuity and further strengthen the work of the Montreal Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lebanon. I turn the floor now to Saudi Arabia.
شكرا سعادة الرئيس المشارك. تؤيد المملكة العربية السعودية مشروع المقرر المقدم أسوة بما تقدمت به دولة البحرين ولبنان الشقيقتين بشأن استمرار مشاركة دول آسيا الوسطى ضمن مجموعة دول أوروبا الشرقية. وترى المملكة أن هذا المقترح يعكس مبدأ الاستمرارية ويحافظ على الممارسة المتبعة، لا سيما وأن هذه الدول تشارك ضمن مجموعة دول أوروبا الشرقية منذ أكثر من 30 عاماً، الأمر الذي يجعل أي تغيير في هذا الترتيب المستقر بحاجة إلى مبررات واضحة وتوافق بين الأطراف. شكراً سعادة الرئيس المشارك.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. I turn back now to Kyrgyzstan. You have the floor.
Я хочу добавить два предложения. Вот, отвечая на выступления некоторых наших коллег, вы правильно отметили, что все группы по Монреальскому протоколу распределены неформально. Но более того, каждая сторона сама выбирает группу, в которую хотела бы реализовывать свою работу. А также, отвечая на вопрос, на предложение одной стороны, я бы хотел добавить, региональные сети создавались для эффективности реализации Монреальского протокола, а не как географическая классификация государств. Поэтому единственным критерием должны быть эффективность реализации по Монреальскому протоколу и его Кигалийской поправке, а не расположение на карте. Правильно сказали, если мы будем следовать по данному прецеденту, то некоторые страны, которые находятся географически в другом месте, но по данному протоколу находятся в западноевропейских группах, то это создастся действительно плохой прецедент. И это приведет к очень заторможению реализации нашего общего плана действий мероприятий. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Kyrgyzstan. On my list after China, I now have the United Kingdom, Qatar, United States of America, and Turkey. I urge any other countries wishing to take the floor to put their name forward, because we'd like to close this discussion. China, you have the floor.
谢谢。中国代表团感谢主席和秘书处推动本议题讨论所做工作。中方高度重视并支持中亚5国在该决议草案中表达的关切。中方始终认为，蒙特利尔议定书取得公认成效，重要经验之一是各缔约方始终坚持相互尊重、平等协商、包容参与和务实合作。中方认为，地区组有关安排应有利于维护公平和代表性，促进各缔约方平等有效参与议定书工作。中方主张，应当尊重并维护长期实践形成的既有做法，保障中亚国家的平等参与权，同时确保议定书各项机制能够持续有效运转。为此，中方支持主席和秘书处推动继续开展磋商，充分听取各方意见。中方愿与各方一道，坚持协商一致，推动本议题得到公平稳妥解决，共同维护议定书框架下的团结协作和多边主义精神。
Thank you very much, China. I now turn the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Co-Chair. The UK thanks the proponents from the Central Asian states for the CRP and for raising this issue. We recognise that questions relating to regional groupings are important to the parties concerned. However, similarly to the views of the EU and Australia, we take the view that this is not a matter for a Montreal Protocol MOP decision. We believe that arrangements relating to participation and representation in regional groups are matters for the relevant states and groups themselves to discuss and agree. The UK would therefore encourage the relevant parties to continue informal discussions on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United Kingdom. I see Qatar, you have the floor.
شكرا سعادة الرئيس المشارك. تؤيد دولة قطر للدول الداعمة مثل البحرين والمملكة العربية السعودية وروسيا الخاص باستمرار مشاركة دول آسيا الوسطى ضمن مجموعة دول أوروبا الشرقية، وذلك لاستقرار منظومة عمل بروتوكول مونتريال والتزامها بمتطلباته وتؤكد دعمها لاعتماد هذا النص. شكرا.
Thank you very much, Qatar. I turn the floor now to the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. We've been listening very carefully to the discussion here this afternoon, as well as some of the discussions at the XMOP just yesterday. And let me just say, we appreciate the CRP put forward by the 5 proponents, and we have enormous respect and appreciation for their ongoing work, efforts, and contributions to the Montreal Protocol. I think this is an important issue that they have drawn to our attention by putting forward this CRP. That said, on the issue of regional groups, we have a broad position that is not specific to this particular proposal, but that would apply universally, that we do not support having this meeting of the parties undertake taking decisions, either assigning, confirming, or reassigning membership or participation in particular regional groups. The rationale for that, I think, I'm not going to take the time of the group to reiterate it, but the points made by Canada and Australia are frankly very similar and nearly identical to our own position. And so just to say, as others have said, we would really encourage that on the margins of this meeting, that there is further dialogue, further engagement, with the hope that it can lead, I think, in a way that is respectful to all of the countries in the room, to some type of solution that perhaps can accommodate the concerns that have been expressed. But for us, as a broad procedural matter, we just don't support having the meeting of the parties take decisions on regional group status for any of the regions or in the context of this specific proposal. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, United States. Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Turkey believes that uninterrupted and effective functioning of the bodies established under the Montreal Protocol is essential. The United Nations regional group structure and long-standing practice governing regional participation under the Montreal Protocol have provided continuity, predictability, and stability for many years. For more than 3 decades, the existing regional arrangements have enabled the effective participation of all members in the work of the protocol. We believe that this long-established practice and continuity should be respected. We also believe that informal nature of regional groups and their autonomy in the conducting their internal coordination and nomination process should continue to be respected. Turkey, therefore, believes that the way forward should preserve the long-standing regional arrangements, respect established practice, and continuity. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Turkey. I now have 2 more countries on my list. Kazakhstan as the proponent, as the lead proponent perhaps, and Iran. So I turn the floor to Kazakhstan.
Madam Co-Chair, I thank you. I was very carefully listening all my colleagues and their opinions on the situation, and I'm very grateful that they expressed their views. I just want to mention a few comments on what was said today regarding the document INF that was prepared for, I believe, that was prepared by the Azon Secretariat, and we are very grateful for that. In the conclusion, it says exactly that other multilateral environmental agreement, it's related to the list of the UN that was referred a number of times today and before. So other multilateral environmental agreement and forums have their own categorization of regional groups and different rules of membership in their treaty bodies. Some use the 5 United Nations regional groups, but others don't. I'm just citing the document, just to be clear. Regarding the matter of, that was brought, also a number of ideas was brought that membership or the association, let's say, of different countries in different groups defined by the regional groups. I think it's quite a bit, I can't find the right word in this matter, but I mean, it's quite a bit doubtful, because if you take a look on the founding fathers of the United Nations and in general international law, the primary source of international law, it's a member state. And the regional group is a secondary or third or whatever. And please, who have legal background, please explain me how the third, secondary, or which source of law or order defines how primary source of law have to act and accomplish its sovereign rights, inalienable sovereign rights of as each member of member state, and we respect every single right. In this case, I don't have answer to this question. If someone has answer to the question, I'm more than welcome to discuss anytime until the Friday night while I'm here. It will be really appreciated, because we really want to solve this issue once and for all. We also mentioned that our CRP is tabled not to establish any precedent, and we can put that even in a document if it's necessary, that without setting any precedent, but however, to solve this issue, which is staying actually on our spirit of our Montreal Protocol, and that stain is growing. Yesterday, we paid all our efforts to hold this stain and don't let it grow further. And we show that joint efforts will and compromise could overcome any misunderstandings or misinterpretations. I also want to echo to one of our colleagues that mentioned that efforts has to be done on the out of this plenary. My dear friends, efforts was done. We already met today during the lunchtime, and unfortunately, we heard the same story, I mean, in a different tones, and I'm very grateful for everyone who joined to that meeting. I mean, the members of our group, Eastern European group, I'm really grateful, but the narrative left stays the same, and moreover, we are open for more such meetings. And in this case, I want to personally thank the distinguished delegation of United States that these things could be, and Canada as well, that they offered their experience, their understanding to solve this issue on the margins and to discuss it. And I believe this view is also shared by as was mentioned by Australia and as well European Union. We rely on you colleagues, and let's meet together. Maybe we can meet broader than EEG if it's necessary, and we have plenty of time and to solve this issue. And as I said, don't allow this stain be put on the spirit of the Montreal Protocol. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kazakhstan. I turn the floor now to Iran.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. First, I would like to refer to the main objective and soul of the international treaties, which is binding and strengthening of the collaboration between the nations. So due to this, and to increase the strengthening of the collaboration and network among the Montreal Protocol parties, Islamic Republic of Iran would like to express the support of the CRP1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iran. And then lastly on my list, I have Russian Federation. You have the floor.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. У нас сейчас состоялась дискуссия. В ходе этой дискуссии значительное количество стран, входящих в группу в азиатскую группу азиатских стран, выразило свое желание о сохранении статуса КВО в составе всех региональных групп. Эта же позиция была высказана и рядом других делегаций. Как известно, по имеющейся практике и правилам, войти в состав группы можно только в том случае, если по этому вопросу будет достигнут консенсус всех стран, входящих в ту или иную группу. В данном случае мы наблюдаем, что группа азиатских стран хочет остаться в том составе, в каком они находятся. И никто не может им навязать принять новые страны в свой состав. Так же, как страны Центральной Азии хотят оставаться в составе восточноевропейской группы. Никто не может им навязать необходимость перехода в состав другой группы, если они этого не захотят сами. В этой связи, госпожа председатель, я хотел бы вернуться к тому вопросу, который я задал в своем предыдущем выступлении, и получить разъяснение юридической службы секретариата, имеет ли кто-то возможности права навязать стране без ее желания необходимость перехода в состав другой группы. Если бы мы имели этот ответ, я думаю, наша дискуссия могла бы идти в более конструктивном ключе и быть более продуктивной. Спасибо, госпожа председатель.
Thank you very much, Russia, and my apologies for overlooking the question that you asked earlier. As I have no other delegates wishing to take the floor, I will turn to the Secretariat to provide an answer to your question. Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. The position of the Secretariat on the question raised is set out in the information note that we prepared on composition of the Eastern European states. So there it's mentioned that the 5 regional groups operate on an informal basis. The Secretariat does not participate in their meetings and keeps no records of their meetings. And it is for each group to determine, among other things, which states are members of that group. The document also cites the UN Juridical Yearbook of 2003, which refers that it is understood that admission to a regional group is based on consensus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Russian Federation.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Мы внимательно выслушали выступление представителя юридической службы секретариата, но, к сожалению, мы не получили ответа на наш вопрос. Может быть, я не очень правильно его сформулировал, я попытаюсь еще раз. Вопрос следующий. Может ли кто-то навязать стране необходимость перехода из состава одной региональной группы в другую? Или не может, без согласия конкретной страны? Вопрос, насколько я понимаю, четкий и ясный. Хотел бы получить такой же четкий и ясный ответ. Спасибо. К сожалению, в информационном записке, которая была предоставлена секретариатом, ответа на этот вопрос нет. Спасибо.
Thank you, Russian Federation. I turn to the Secretariat for some further clarification.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So the understanding of the Secretariat is that a party cannot be forced out of a regional group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Please give us a moment to confer on the podium. Thank you. Thank you very much, delegates, for your patience and your understanding while we conferred on a potential way forward. We did note that there were distinct proposals and views on the CRP. Some were strongly supportive of the CRP, and some views were not supportive of the MOP taking a decision on this issue. And certainly we did not see a consensus on the CRP at this stage. Therefore, we urge members of the group to continue their margins discussions. We did note that some parties offered assistance during the course of the discussion, and interested members may be interested to take to take that offer of assistance on board. We are, at this stage, we will keep the agenda item open for those informal consultations on the margins to continue. The Secretariat can provide a room, if necessary, for those informal consultations, but they will not be facilitated. It'll be up to the group itself to conduct those consultations, and we would request Kazakhstan or another proponent to report back to the plenary towards the end of the meeting. I hope that is a suitable way forward for the room. Kazakhstan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. And thank you for that proposal. I also want to, before we continue, just to reiterate that was just said by Representative Ozone Secretariat, that there is no country or any other member who can decide for other one. And it was actually mentioned in my statement as well, that primary source of law could not be moved or excluded or ousted or advised to go somewhere by the not primary law for source of law, I mean by the group of countries that actually, as my colleagues mentioned, working for the sake of Montreal Protocol for saving ozone layer. And it's from the stand of international law, it's absolutely unexplainable. And if you take into the consideration the opinion of the Ozone Secretariat, legal opinion of Ozone Secretariat, we can't finish this discussion here and now, because we received the answer that there is no right for other countries to decide where they belong. But I don't want to put under the question the decision that was just announced, and more than happy if room will be provided, and I don't really get, help me with clarification. Does it mean that you don't provide even the time slot when we're going to meet and put that on the screen? We have to facilitate ourselves, or how it's supposed to work? Can I get the clarification, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kazakhstan. We appreciate your flexibility to go along with the proposed path forward. In terms of the time, the Secretariat would make a room available at a time that was requested from members of the group. So I don't think the Secretariat feels like it can set a time itself. It would be up to members of the group to make a way forward on that one. Thank you. We are at closure, and I am conscious we're running out of interpretation time. And I now have 3 members wishing to take the floor. I see you, Russian Federation. I was about to pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, госпожа председатель. Прежде всего, хотел бы поблагодарить представителя юридической службы за четкое разъяснение процедуры возможности перехода какой-либо стороны из состава одной региональной группы в другую. Главное в этом разъяснении было то, что без согласия конкретной стороны это сделать никто не может. Мы услышали мнение 5 центральноазиатских стран о том, что они хотят оставаться в составе Восточноевропейской региональной группы. В этих условиях мы считаем, что продолжение дальнейших консультаций, каких-либо консультаций по этому вопросу, излишне. И эта дискуссия должна быть закрыта. С тем пониманием, что центральноазиатские страны остаются в составе Восточноевропейской группы. Так как они не принесут дальнейших консультаций каких-либо результатов. Еще раз, после получения разъяснений юридической службы, всем, я надеюсь, все стало ясно. Без согласия конкретных стран никто и никакие решения, никто им не может навязать необходимость перехода в состав другой группы. Еще раз считаю, что эта дискуссия должна быть закрыта, и мы должны начать заниматься конструктивной, субстантивной работой. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Russian Federation. Turkmenistan, I'll give you the floor, but we are out of time. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, госпожа председатель, за то, что дали мне слово, даже когда время закончилось. У меня буквально на полминуты вопрос. Я говорю от имени всех 5 центральноазиатских стран. У меня вопрос. Вот это все, вопрос и ответ по поводу, ответ секретариата будет занесено в протокол?
Yes, indeed. All the statements, questions and responses will be included in the report of the meeting. Thank you, Turkmenistan. EU?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, for letting us in late. The EU can support further consultations on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I will close this agenda item for now. We will come back to it later in the meeting, and we ask delegates to engage as we proposed, as on the way forward as we proposed. Kyrgyzstan, you have some additional points to make?
Да, в конце хотелось добавить, уважаемый мадам Co-Chair.
I'm sorry, we're about to lose interpretation, so perhaps you could continue in English. Thank you.
Перевода нет, что ли? Предлагаю, как было? Madam Co-Chair, I offer rename our group to Eastern European countries, Caucasus and Central Asia.
Thank you for that suggestion. I am sure the group will take that into account in its deliberations. So thank you very much. We are finished for this evening. I refer delegates to the contact groups that we have occurring tonight. We have strengthening the Montreal Protocol at 8:30. Oh, sorry, not at 8:30, 6:30, because there are a few side consultations happening before then. And we will be doing replenishment again tomorrow morning. Thank you very much and good evening.